coronavirus pandemic. The government pushing for the use of digital learning as an alternative during this time, but this has only exposed serious inefficiencies within the sector. The Ministry of Education says they have postponed school reopening to June 4th for students to pick up from where they had left off, which means that schools will now cumulatively lose 7 weeks of learning time.
We know that we are not reaching all the children, and that every effort is being made to try and reach those children by getting, we are actually now thinking about how to get the gadgets to them, because you heard His Excellency the President had launched some balloons a few months ago. Quite a number of those balloons are up there. So it's not going to be an issue of bandwidth, but the issue of the end product, which is either the tablet or the computer or a smartphone.
Then there is a headache of recovering lost time. The ministry says the August holidays will be shortened by 2 weeks, school days adjusted to have longer hours, and school term mid-break reduced by 4 days. Also, the original dates for the KCPE and KCSE exams in November remain intact.
I want to emphasize one point, that whenever the examination is going to be administered, every child, every Kenyan child will have been given the opportunity to cover whatever time that is lost before the said examination is administered.
But with the uncertain nature of the global pandemic, no one can tell for sure how practical these directives are. Amos Keboru, an education policy expert, says it is time the country diagnosed its education policy to accommodate and address issues brought about by the pandemic.
Whatever is happening right now has to be looked at as a temporary relief in terms of helping children to minimize loss of learning. While we still obsessed with these national examinations, whereas we know that we can therefore place all children into secondary school, why don't we therefore begin to identify mechanisms that will facilitate all children to join Form 1? Secondly, why are we still having a lot of emphasis on the Form 4 examinations, whereas we know that perhaps to join into certain institutions and faculties, it is not just a function of how you performed in national examinations? Why shouldn't we therefore begin to have this very serious conversation at this point in time, so that the examination calendar is not reduced just to some poorly designed assessment and exams that we think that's where life starts and ends? We should also be calling Mitiani House to order and ask them, what are you doing to adjust? Everybody's adjusting. KRA has adjusted. Central Bank has adjusted. Banks have adjusted. Transport sector has adjusted. What is so big about examinations that they have refused to adjust?
With close to 2 months of the calendar already affected, the government has some difficult decisions to make if everything is to be covered within the original term dates, regardless of the shift.
There is the science of learning. Children learn in particular contexts. Children have a short concentration span, and we are not able to adjust it. There is nothing we can do around it, and there is nothing wrong around it. So I think that even for us to begin talking about finishing the syllabus is a little bit too unfair on these children who even within the normal times will be struggling, and yet now we are saying that we will have measures that even are forcing content into their head. So the fact of the matter is that yes, teachers will push the content, but the fact is that very few children will actually make sense in terms of getting competences, desired skills, and perhaps even acquiring the necessary knowledge required in that particular syllabus on that content that will be pushed to them.
However unfortunate, the pandemic has provided an opportunity to reform the education sector to fit into the new normal.
So what we should be doing at this point in time is asking ourselves, how do we position education post-COVID? And education post-COVID must be a conversation around how can we make sure that our education system is more resilient to these kind of shocks.